Hi, this is BK Black Krishna from manforwars.com, where I'm promoting polite patriotism to help people stop being turned into rude, sketchy zombies making more and instead respect, look, walk, talk, and feel great, communicate well offline about what they learn online, and be proud nationalists against globalism. So feel free to check out and support the manforwars.com efforts as you'd like. If you see a lot of people doing great stuff online, you want to help them talk offline, this is a great way to do that. And there's PayPal information and direct deposit donation information below. But this video is called Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson went from making strong to weak men. Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson went from making strong to weak men. Joe Rogan, famous actor, comedian, podcast host, mixed martial arts commentator, fit, tough, testosterone-y looking guy, and a man loved by millions of especially men around the world. And Jordan Peterson, University of Toronto professor, challenges compelled speech. He's yo YouTube daddy. He's a who's your YouTube daddy? Professor JP. He's like a father figure to many men, and so on. And so he's also loved by millions of especially men, but even women and others around the world. So Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson are two key figures that men look for, including myself, as a source of information and inspiration, and yet they went from making strong men to now making weak men, and I'll briefly explain how. So one is Joe Rogan used to get into everything. And actually, I guess one of the high points of this is when he had on legendary talk show host, an old friend of his, Alex Jones from Infowars.com, and they had a 3.5-hour podcast where Jones can be a little bit of a he's run his own media empire. He's been yelling at the man for 22 years, and he's in charge of his operations. So he just kind of goes and says what he wants, and there's no real check and balance on that. And when you're yelling at the man for 20 plus years, you can be pretty up. And he's like your big brother versus big brother. You may not always agree, but he can get you in better shape to deal with whatever you're dealing with. So that's Alex Jones. And Joe Rogan, among his best podcast host skills, where he had Joe Rogan and his friend Eddie Bravo had their friend Alex Jones on, is saying, hey, slow down, hold on. I want to make sure all of my audience understands you. If you're a liberal, if you're a conservative, if you're an author, if you're an athlete, if you're a doctor, if you're a scientist, if you're a mixed martial artist fighter, if you're a painter, if you're it doesn't matter, right? Joe Rogan is good at doing that, going, whoa, slow down. Let's make sure everybody understands this. You might be speaking to people who know what you talk about, but I want to make sure that I understand it and everybody listening to this podcast understands it. So Joe Rogan's very good at that, and he's very good at what he does. I'm not saying he's bad at what he does. I'm saying Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson went from making strong men to now making weak men and explaining how. So you can see the Joe Rogan podcast with Alex Jones. It was the most downloaded podcast in history. Joe Rogan's got, a billion views a year, millions of views a month, and downloads and so on. And that was the highlight, because that's where his everyman quality was matched up. His and Eddie Bravo, his co-host for that episode, Eddie Bravo, was matched up against Alex Jones. I'm the only man who's yelling at the man this hard for this long, right? And that type of Alex Jones type thing, right? So Joe Rogan kind of went, whoop, slow down. I get where you're coming from. You're probably trying to do the right thing, but let's break it down, right? What do you mean by that, right? And so Alex had to go, okay, I'm on your podcast now. It's not my InfoWars empire where I can say and do whatever I want. I got to make sure I'm cool and I can clarify some things, and you can really understand where I'm coming from and what's going on. So it's an incredible episode, the Joe Rogan podcast, episode number 911, 9/11, like 9/11 truth, the 9/11 attacks. 9/11 was an inside job. So Joe Rogan podcast, episode 911 with Eddie Bravo. And he's done a number of good podcasts. Like I said, I was a fan of Joe Rogan until I started to realize, what's happening to him and how the culture is affecting him, or how he's sold out in some way, or how he's got some friends he's got to make sure he gets along with, so it kind of takes away the edge he used to have. So here's how Joe Rogan went from making strong to making weak men, right? Joe Rogan has t-shirts on his website like "Don't be a bitch." He always encourages guys to man up and so on and so forth. And yet, when it comes to his podcast, I started, and other people have noticed this, I started seeing him where Joe Rogan used to get into everything, right? He used to get into everything. He may not agree, he may disagree, but he wasn't afraid to discuss anything, just like a man, right? Especially guys, just not afraid to hear anything, not afraid to say anything. A direct threat is a little bit different, but short of a direct threat, if Johnny Cash says, "Joe, I shot a man in Reno just to watch him die," Joe can be like, "Well, Johnny, I'm not sure if I agree with, that in principle, but I'm not scared to hear you tell me the story of how you shot a man in Reno just to watch him die. So what is it? What happened?" Right? So Joe Rogan used to be able to get into everything. And then Joe Rogan started more and more. He always had a way of doing this as sort of being a guy that could keep things light. He's a comedian at heart, but he's more and more getting out of everything. Anytime something comes up, he's increasingly, at least last I checked, he was increasingly escaping from conversations, escaping from topics, escaping from challenging ways of thinking, escaping from challenging what some of his guests are saying, just escaping from all of that, right? Especially defaulting to more mainstream views or bringing up something like, "Yeah, it's amazing. We're on this little blue ball, this little planet Earth, in a huge galaxy, in a huge universe full of millions of stars and planets." And he just gets off into that shit where you're like, "Yeah, Joe, that's your default to get away from what we're talking about, to bring it to the point where we're on a little blue marble in a giant universe, a giant ocean of stars and galaxies. But what the hell are you doing? Why don't you get into what you were talking about as opposed to get out of it, right? Get into it, get to the root of it, get to the truth of it." He's doing that less and less. Another thing is he questions how people know a lot of red pill information or a lot of conservative information, right? Like he'll have somebody like Candace Owens on, and he'll question her about, well, what about global warming? What about climate change? It's obviously real. So many scientists believe this. Why did? And he's attacking her on that, trying to protect the global warming, climate change stuff, as opposed to saying, wait a second, you are a brilliant, beautiful, conservative woman, Candace Owens, and you have obviously, read something that convinced you. You're not an expert on this particular topic, and you don't even want to talk about it that much, but you just brought up the fact that you saw some stuff, Candace Owens did as a conservative, saying, "You know what, I've read some stuff where I'm not 100% certain that is a real thing that we have to worry about that much, what the weather might be like in 20 years, right? But she says, I'm not going to, say that this is my expertise. Let's go back to my areas of expertise. But instead, Joe Rogan will do stuff like attack her on that, attack her on that, attack her on that. And so he's doing a lot more defaulting to attacking his guests to defend establishment and mainstream points of view, as opposed to saying, you want to challenge those? Hey, I'm a badass dude. That's what I'm supposed to do, right? Not saying I agree with every crazy thing somebody says. That's not the normal thing to say. But I'm not just gonna, ride for the establishment that hard or crap on people for thinking differently. And yet he's increasingly doing that more and more, as opposed to being more of a diplomatic host who allows his guests to express themselves. Joe Rogan is doing more and more of that, and that is making him a weaker man as a representation, an archetype of what a strong man should be. He's now turning into an archetype of what a weak man should be. And he is making more weak men as a result of that. And so you can look into some Joe Rogan stuff, and that's a broader framing mechanism, and you can find more examples when it comes to that. And then when it comes to Jordan Peterson, Professor Jordan Peterson, he got famous a couple of years ago now for fighting against compelled speech, where a lot of the gender ideology or a lot of the gender activists were pushing to force people to use certain language. As opposed to saying, this is what we want to do, we hope it's okay. They're like, no, you have to do this. You have to say this. You have to think this way. And he resisted that. And a lot of people were really happy he resisted that. And he got a lot of notoriety. And he went from an unknown University of Toronto professor to a world-famous public figure very quickly. And he, like I said, he's your YouTube daddy. He's said a lot of great stuff. I'm not saying Joe Rogan said a lot of great stuff. I would not say that he's not done some great work, helped a lot of people out, and so on. I'm just talking about, what the latest is with them last I checked, and something that you should definitely be careful to watch out for, because people change, right? The media, for example, the mass media, they will say a lot of truth, Somebody really did get hit by a car, yesterday, and it's in the paper. It's true. And that is true. Even though they lie, that is true. But they use that truth to sell lies. So they will use truth to sell lies, or, even bad people or whatever can say good things. Hitler can say, you shouldn't beat your dog. Now, if Hitler says that, does that mean, well, Hitler said it, so it's probably bad, so I guess I should beat my dog? No. Even bad people can say good things, right? So it's about, what it is. So I will say in their defense, Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson have done a lot of great work, which I really liked, and said a lot of great things, which I really liked. But more recently, in the last, year or last few months, or however you want to define it, they have been going from making strong men to making weak men. So Jordan Peterson used to say, in his Kermit the Frog voice, he puts some balls sometimes. He used to put more balls into his Kermit the Frog voice. Just like Jay-Z doesn't have a good rap voice, rapper Jay-Z, but he puts some balls into his voice. And so he makes it a good rap voice. And so he's made a good rap voice for 20 years. Biggie, the late, great, notorious B.I.G., he had almost a perfect relax and take notes while I take tokes of this marijuana smoke. Throw you in a choke. Gun smoke, gun smoke. He had a deep, full, thick, baritone rap voice. Jay-Z's more like, I'm Jay-Z, it's Hove, and it's a high-pitched voice, but because he puts some balls into it, and he's a good rapper, he understands music, how to fit in and be part of it, he can make it a good rap voice. And Jordan Peterson is very similar with his high-pitched Kermit the Frog voice, where he basically acts like your YouTube daddy. He says, you men out there, you're not told you should take responsibility. You're not told what you could possibly do. You're not told how you can reach your potential. And you know what you need to do? You need to lift the heaviest thing you can. You need to take on the most responsibility you feel you can. And you need to try and carry that weight. And even if you can't carry that weight all the way, just trying to carry that weight will make you a better man and will help you reach your potential. But first you gotta clean your damn room. Get your house in order. How are you gonna tell anyone else what to do unless you've got your stuff together? And that's Jordan Peterson. And you're watching the Jordan Peterson video and going, wow, thanks, YouTube Daddy. That's awesome. Thanks so much, YouTube Daddy. No one ever tells me I'm shit. No one ever tells me I can do shit. Oh, YouTube Daddy. Oh, you're so great. And so he's great. I've recommended him. There's still stuff at my manforwars.com website and on my BitChute channel, YouTube channel. There's still some great Jordan Peterson stuff up there, right? And some recommendations to check out Jordan Peterson. However, in the last few months or however long it's been, Jordan Peterson has been going from making strong men to making weak men. And by that, comedian Owen Benjamin, great comedian Owen Benjamin, used to be in Hollywood, blacklisted because he's a rebel against some of the BS and corruption and evil in Hollywood, and yet he's got his own bear community of dedicated followers who love him being an independent badass dude. And so comedian Owen Benjamin, who I recommend you check out on BitChute and on YouTube and you support, he has also called out Jordan Peterson in a number of ways in the same way as a guy he used to like, who used to make strong men, he used to say great things, who's now making weak men, right? And so comedian Owen Benjamin has referenced that Jordan Peterson signed to CAA, Creative Artists Agency, which is the largest Hollywood talent agency. They are the largest agency in Hollywood. So the actors in Hollywood that we love, right? Many of the biggest ones are signed to CAA. And he went from being an unknown University of Toronto professor to a global star, very quickly, and then signing to CAA. He's, taking advantage later in life of making a lot more money for speaking appearances and traveling around the world and having people pay, $80 or $100 a ticket or $250 a ticket to meet him in person and all this stuff. So some of that stuff can be kind of shady, though I'm not against capitalism and doing what the market will support. But that could be certainly a factor. But more broadly speaking, you started to hear more repetitive insecurity, right? It's kind of like if your dad was like, son, I've got the answers you need to make you a man. So when you grow up, you'll be a good one. And you're like, thanks, Dad. Good to know, right? And even with kids, with young people, I tend to have a direct approach. I'm like, hey, I'm Batman. I've got a Batcave. I'm a billionaire. I'm a superhero. I don't say all that, but I act like that because kids need a confident adult to be a confident kid and to listen to you, right? So So you want to be confident around young people, so they can earn some confidence, even if you have some issues, even if you're not Batman, who's a billionaire superhero with a bat cave or whatever, and rich guy or whatever. You can at least be confident, so you can help give the kids confidence, right? But but I started to see Jordan Peterson have a lot more repetitive insecurity, where he's a lot more unsure of things, uncertain of things. He used to know who to challenge. He used to know, he's like, well, this is who I am. You should be an individual. You should be this. He didn't have all the answers, but the answers he had, he was certain of. And when it comes to challenging, leftist, neo-Marxist, postmodernist, ideology, and all the compelled speech and the miserable, weak, bitching people, making more miserable, weak, bitching people who mess with other people and screw up everybody when it comes to, I'm messed up, so you need to do this. I'm messed up, so you need, no, you're messed up, you need to do something different. I don't need to do anything because you're messed up. Why? Why are you offended by what I'm doing? You should not be messed up. And making other people do something to make you less messed up. You're not going to be less messed up. You're just a lying, crying, bitching victim bully. Screw that, right? That used to be more Jordan Peterson's attitude, but he started bending more and more towards the way they think. So he started getting more insecure, more repetitive, more unsure of what to say and what to do. Excuse me. And when you're looking at that, it's like watching your dad go from being a confident guy, son, I've got this, to son, I'm not sure. It's been a hard day, and I can't really talk to you right now. And Dad, what's happening? It's like, well, I'm not sure what I should say to you, right? Jordan Peterson started turning into more of that kind of guy. And he started getting, he started kowtowing to more weirder and liberal, insecure ideas, right? And started saying, well, if those people are messed up and it makes them feel bad, then you probably shouldn't do it. As opposed to saying, no. Instead of taking weak people who feel bad and agreeing with them, you should say, no, we can't do that. We need to make strong people who feel good. He started saying, well, those weak, messed up people feel bad, so maybe, you should just do what they say. He started doing more of that. So again, Jordan Peterson went from making strong men who tried to do the right thing and get respect for it, to making weak men who could make more weak men and other weak people and indulge more weak people. So for example, Judge Kavanaugh, Judge Brett Kavanaugh, was up for a Supreme Court nomination recently in the last few months, and a very, very famous situation in the United States. And then all of a sudden, even though he had a perfect record, he had 6 FBI background checks. He was known as like a goody two-shoes nerd type guy who tried super hard in school, married with 2 beautiful daughters, doesn't have a blemish on his record, 6 FBI background checks. All of a sudden, out of the blue, boom! From 36 years ago, a woman comes up and accuses him of almost trying to rape her. And then boom, another woman comes up and says he was part of a team of gang rapists. And then boom, somebody else comes up and says, oh. So all these accusations come out of nowhere. And all of a sudden, this guy with a perfect record is a conservative judge, somebody that Trump appointed to be confirmed for the U.S. Supreme Court, is now being attacked by a bunch of liberals going, no, he's a rapist. This guy's scum, blah, blah, blah. And so it's like, all right, so this is like, whoa, everyone's like, oh, crap. We just did 6 FBI background checks on Judge Kavanaugh, and now all this stuff comes out. All right. And so the Republicans in the U.S. and the Democrats in the U.S. and other people in the media were like, we've got to look into this. They went, all right, fine. This is a Supreme Court judge, confirmation situation, so we should look into this. So they looked into all of it. They had a 7th detailed FBI background check with all the new information, and they found all of those claims to be bullshit, false. He never even knew these women. And the witnesses that some of the women said they had said, we weren't there. This did not happen. Or if this happened, we weren't there to see it. And then the women were like a little fuzzy on the dates. Well, I don't know exactly when it happened. I don't know exactly where it happened. I don't know exactly how I got there. I don't know exactly how I got home. I only had 1 beer, though. I only had 1 beer, so I wasn't drunk. And I wasn't drunk. But everything else is kind of hazy. So there's a bunch of bullshit in terms of the accusers of Judge Kavanaugh, to the point where it clearly was like, at the end of all this, it was clearly that a good man who's lived a good life, who's got a good wife and good kids, were dragged through the mud for political reasons by the Democrats and by the left for horrible reasons. Just they take this good man and they tarnish him and they slander him and they make the world think this man who's led a great life on behalf of himself and others. He's got tons of guys saying he's a good guy. He's got tons of girls he's worked with and known for decades saying this is a good guy. He's always been a gentleman. He's always been a great guy. That's just who he is. You're now calling him a rapist and a gang rapist and attempted rapist. All bullshit, right? So at the end of all of that being found bullshit, he's like, okay, now we're gonna put you on this. We're gonna put we're gonna go through with the confirmation process to make you a Supreme Court judge. After all of that, Jordan Peterson tweets, well, even though Judge Kavanaugh might not be guilty, because some people feel so bad about him, he probably shouldn't be on the Supreme Court. He should recuse himself. That would be the right thing to do. It's like, what? What the hell are you talking about, Mr. Jordan Peterson? Mr. likes to make strong men. You like to make strong men. This obviously good guy, nice guy judge, got dragged through the mud because of some liberal false accusation bullshit that was proved to be all garbage. Yeah, you could take the accusations seriously, but you look into them and you say, we took them seriously, and now we know you're lying, and you're full of shit. You tried to do this to a good man, and you should never be trusted again, you pieces of shit, right? That should be the attitude when it comes to this, right? But instead, Jordan Peterson was going, well, because of all the controversy and because of this, even if he's not really guilty, because some people might feel bad anyway and don't believe, even though they found it was all bullshit, they still want to believe that he might be a bad guy. He should do the right thing and not, try and be on the Supreme Court. It's like, what the hell are you, what is wrong with you? Are you crazy? This man, this good man, was dragged through the mud. His family, his wife, his daughters, dragged through the mud for no goddamn reason. And it's all been cleared up. And now he's got a chance to get his life back in order and get on with his career and do a good job on the Supreme Court. And you're saying, because some people, weak, lying, bitchy people are feeling bad, and some of them don't believe, and they get their manties and panties in a bunch, you should probably... It's like, no, right? And Jordan Peterson got a lot of blowback for that tweet. So that's another example of how Jordan Peterson is making weak men instead of strong men. And when a lot of people went, are you crazy, man? What is wrong with you? We just went through all this, and you know what happened. You know the whole thing. And at the end of all this, you're still saying, yeah, he probably shouldn't be on the Supreme Court. He should recuse himself. That's a weak man making weak men, right? That's somebody saying, well, you know what? It was all bullshit. They took a good guy, and they tried to destroy his life. On some bullshit for biased political reasons, but because those people feel bad, he probably should do the right thing as a man and step down and not make them feel worse. It's like, no, you don't bend to lying bitches, make more bitches who make more bitches. No, you don't do that. It's more bitching coming up. No, you don't do that, right? And so that's another example of how Jordan Peterson, was. Is making weak men. So anyway, there's much more you can see for yourself. Like, I want to make this sort of a broader framing thing. There's enough specifics there for you so you can go, well, I see your point on a couple of these issues, and maybe I'll look for some more things if I'm still a fan of Joe Rogan and still a fan of Jordan Peterson. And I personally wouldn't even say I hate these guys. I'm not like, no, Joe Rogan sucks, never, never, never. It's like, no, you just got to be careful. And if you're sniffing some bullshit, if he's on some bullshit because of specific relationships or because his wife spends too much money and he's got to keep making a ton of money and he can't lose certain guests, or whatever their both situations are, or because they're allied and they've got some supporters in the liberal media or the liberal entertainment community, so they've got to compromise, whatever their reasons are, who the hell knows? Right? And you can look into that more for yourself, but it doesn't matter. The point is, they are affecting other people. And that's the point that I'm making in this video. So I'm not saying you should hate Joe Rogan. I'm not saying you should hate Jordan Peterson. I'm not saying everything they've ever said and done is crap, because it's not, because I was a big fan of both. And now I'm not a big fan of Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson. I'm a small fan of many of the good things they've done, and I'm very suspicious of many of the things they are doing now. That is my position on Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson. Would I be a gentleman with either of these guys in appreciation for all the things that they've done in the past on behalf of many men out there? Absolutely. But will I be my own man as well and saying you got to watch out for these guys, moving forward? And the same thing could happen to me, right? The same thing could happen to me. You could say, hey, BK Black Krishna from manforwars.com does things, tries to be a badass dude, tells the truth, and then someone gave him $1,000,000. And now he's not doing that anymore. He's got more stuff. He's got nicer stuff. He's got nicer camera, microphone, place, setup, website, blah, 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 blah. But there's something different about him. There's something, it's not quite the same. It's the same looking guy. He's got the same voice. He's doing some of the same stuff, but he's just cutting corners on things. He's not putting his balls into things. He's afraid of dealing with things. He's making people afraid of dealing with things. He's kind of bending to weak people, making more weak people, or lying bitches, making more bitches who make more bitches. So he was a good guy doing a good job, no doubt about that, but something happened. He sold out, or he fell off, or he got soft, or whatever, right? So it could happen to me. It could happen to anybody. And I'm saying it's happening to them, and it should not affect you. And that's the point of making this video. So anyway, so BK Black Krishna for manforwars.com. Feel free to support the Man for Wars efforts. Comment, subscribe, get in touch, pass on, share the videos, whatever you think is useful. And feel free to donate to these efforts through the PayPal information below or the direct deposit information below. And otherwise, I hope this helps, and I'll talk to you soon. Cheers.